our stuff. We need to let them sit in it, and that's how they learn to tolerate it, or begin to tolerate it. If we sit with them in those feelings, then we are showing them that it's okay to have those feelings, and that we trust that they can feel those feelings, and it's gonna be okay. So that's really important. So tolerating the uncomfortable feelings is really the next step after you validate. And that's just really, again, letting them feel it. Feel it. Where do you feel it? What's the feeling? Maybe what happened. Then just kind of letting them cry, letting them be sad, letting them be scared. Helping them breathe through it, and really working to help them not judge it as a good thing or a bad thing. Oh, it's so bad I'm crying, or I'm bad that I'm sad. Just let them feel what it is and not judge it, and be curious toward it, and really encourage them. If you're curious about it, then they can be curious about it, and show them compassion so that they can then show the compassion to themselves. And that modeling that you can do by tolerating their feelings and trusting them to be able to tolerate them themselves and their own feelings. And after you sit in helping them tolerate their feelings, then you can maybe, this is what I do, and this is something I do in my office, is I really look at two categories, and I say, okay, what do we have control over and what don't we have control over? The feelings, they're allowed to feel, and we just want to let them feel that. And that goes in the, we can feel that and have control, or don't. And then the other category is what we don't have, or what we do have control over, which is then what can we do to help them change things. So first you want to let them feel whatever they're feeling, and then you want to help them then figure out ways to solve the problem if that's them. But first, let them feel it. And as you let them, you do not want to make the feeling go away, because as they tolerate it, the more they learn how to do that, the less likely they are to numb and use other things later to numb and try not to feel. So that's how feelings show up in your body and what to do with them.
So our final speaker this evening is Dory Mages. And Dory is a licensed social worker, and she's the founder of North Shore Family Services here in Northbrook. She earned her MSW from the University of Illinois at Chicago's Jane Addams College of Social Work, and she also has a Bachelor's of Science in Psychology from the University of Illinois. Dory has worked in a wide variety of social work areas, including as a social worker in the public schools for 7 years, so she understands the 504 and the IEP process well. As a wife and mother of 3, she understands the challenges and rewards of raising children and is compassionate about helping kids and families navigate the difficult times. Dory strives to give kids, teens, parents, and families the tools they will need to improve their quality of life long after therapy ends. And at the conclusion of Dory's piece, we'll open it up to questions and answers. So, Dory Mages.
Hello? Yep. Dory. Okay. So I've been adjusting my speech as everybody's talking so you don't hear the same things over and over. That's the disadvantage of going last. But I do want to share some tidbits with you and some personal information also, and understand, like my colleagues here, although we are experts in our field, none of us are perfect parents, and we've all been where you are, and we're all continuing to struggle and doing the things that we know are supposed to happen, but we all need some help. And going per Audrey's discussion is you need to find your tribe too, so lean on each other whenever you need to. I like to say that smart kids get anxious, and I say that sort of tongue-in-cheek, but we hear this a lot. Parents are talking about how their kids are really struggling, and they are worried all the time, but they're like getting straight A's, and they're in AP classes, and they're in honors classes, and all this stuff, and why are they worried? They've always been successful. And I joke with them and say the smart kids get anxious, the dumb kids don't know to be anxious. They're just like, I got this. And I'm like, you're getting D's and you're failing out of school and you're not cleaning your room and you're pissing your mom off. That's not getting this. That's not it. So I want to be real with you and understand where this is coming from. I too was an overachieving student. I'm still an overachiever. I'm trying to recover it, but I'm still there. My parents said to me, you know what, a B is good enough. And I said, no, it's not. I want an A. And I put that pressure on myself, as some of people have talked about putting that pressure on yourself, and I fully admit it, I still do it. And I think putting that pressure on yourself and imposing that on yourself, it pushes you to go further versus shutting down. And I think anxiety is a piece of all of us, as Nikki said as well. We have it, and it's what we do with it. So if it shuts you down and you have a kid sitting in their room and not able to get up to go to school because they're so stressed out, or you have a kid who's so worried about what their friends are going to think they're not going to go out with them, we have a problem. And the kids who say, you know what, I got to figure this out. I'm nervous, and what do I need to do about it? That's success, when you have that anxiety. So one of the things that I do, which is very popular among the schools, is you know how they send out that Power School and whatever other thing that they do to check the grades? I don't do that. I don't check my kids' grades. I'm going to say that again. I don't check my kids' grades. Why? Because it makes me worry about their grades. Why should I worry? I'm already done with school. You heard it. I'm done with school. I don't need to worry about that. And I have a lot of parents who come in and they say, they're getting a C, they're getting a D. That means nothing to me until I take a deep dive and look at it. What's happening? Are they really not understanding the material? Or are they not turning in their work? Or are they doing their work and forgetting to turn it in, or they lose it somewhere along the way? That's an executive functioning piece. That's not an intelligence piece. And it happens all the time. So kids who are struggling, they can be struggling for different reasons, and school only measures a part of their success and their intelligence. It doesn't measure everything. I have a kid that I worked with who's now a sophomore in college, so I have to be a little bit careful because I work locally. This is a kid who came to me his sophomore year. He was getting D's, has ADHD, was medicated, had neuropsych testing, had a 504, all that jazz. And he didn't really care that much because he had no clue how to study. He had a sister who was an overachieving older sister. Some of you might know families like this. Yes. And he just didn't get it. He didn't know what to do. And he was creative and very business-minded. The kid started a YouTube channel, okay? He recorded a video an hour and a half every other day, and he was on YouTube. He had 450,000 followers. The kid was making 60 grand a year, okay? As a sophomore in high school. Mom's worried about his grades. I go, he's got this. He really does have this. And when he was applying to college, he started to get nervous because his grades were okay. And schools look at your grades, right? I said, you have your college essay already written. You've already done all the work. You've got this. And he said to me, well, what about school? What about a good school? And I said, I'm going to tell you something. It doesn't really matter where you go to school. And he was kind of a smart aleck, as some of my favorite kids I work with are. And he said, well, what about Oakton? And I said, I'm going to tell you something about Oakton. You're going to get a great education. You're going to have no loans. You're not going to be in debt. You can go anywhere you want after you finish at Oakton. But let me tell you something about you at Oakton. You're going to think you're too smart for those kids. Then you're not going to do your work. And then you're going to flunk out of Oakton. And his jaw dropped. And we went back to that conversation for another year and a half as he saw me and checked in once a month, things like that. At times he was in my office and he'd say, do you mind if I just check my science grade really quickly? And I'm like, no, I'm so glad that you care and you're checking it. This is great. Ended up at Michigan State, wrote an essay about trying to get into the Kelley School of Business in Indiana. Didn't get in, but he's doing well, and the kid's got the skills. He'll be doing fine. But if that kid just measured his success based on his grades, he would have dropped out of school. no way, he would have pushed himself and persevered. And I think that when we talk about our fears and what that anxiety looks like and when we're stressed, the explanation of anxiety to me is that what if. So when you ask, what are you anxious about? What are you nervous about? What's your fear? Sorry, Audrey. It's, well, what if they don't like me? What if I don't get in? What if my parents get mad? What if I get in trouble? Okay, what if? Entertain that what if. See what's going to happen and help them problem solve, because if you do it for them, they're never going to figure it out. And people talk about them wanting their kids to be happy. It's a lot of young adults who are really happy sitting in their parents' basement playing video games all day long. They're super happy. They have no debt, they've got no bills to pay, they're pretty happy. You don't want happiness. That's not what you want. I'm being sort of facetious, but of course we want our kids to be happy, and we also want them to push for their dreams, and so some of it is self-imposed, some of it is from us, and some kids are just more wired to be more anxious, and we can help them by helping them problem solve. So one of the things that I talk about with kids a lot is, and I do it with itty-bitty ones, I see kids as young as 3 years old in our practice, and we talk about POPs. So write this down, this is going to be really helpful to you. POPs. It's an acronym. Okay? And I just taught this to a bunch of entrepreneurs in a leadership program, and they thought it was the best idea I've ever done, and I just pulled that out of nowhere, but I've been doing this for years. So POPs is trying to figure out what the problem is. P is for problem. Just knowing the problem doesn't solve it. You can still be anxious. I've got this big problem, I'm really stressed out. You stop there, you're still anxious, and you go to all the what ifs. Okay? But the O is for options. What are your options? I've released people back into the workforce, people who've worked for me, who just listen to their clients and say, oh yeah, that's too bad. Yeah, your mom's being really mean. Your friends are really not nice to you. That doesn't solve it. You have to figure out what you can do about it. So get silly with your kids about the options. Even the teenagers, they enjoy this. Like, okay, your friends are blowing you off for the football game. What can you do? Well, you can go to their house and just yell at their mom and, send them nasty texts and whatever, blah, blah. You're not going to do that, hopefully. They're going to make good choices, but give them the crazy, crazy options so they can understand the reality of it. Then they pick one. You have to make a decision. If you've got options, you got to pick one. Otherwise, you're still sitting with the problem, right? And once you pick one, you stick with it. So that's POPs. Problem, options, pick one, stick with it. And once you stick with it, you kind of see through it, is it working for me? Is this option a valid option? Or do I need to choose something else next time this comes up? And in our practice, we talk a lot about that resiliency, because one problem that happens one time, it's going to happen again and again and again in your life. There's patterns in your life. There's things that are going to happen. We don't go through life without issues. It's just life. And you are going to be stressed out, and there are going to be things that get you anxious. But if you just sit there and let it happen and suck it all in and don't do anything about it, you're not going to succeed. And when we talk about success, that's what we're looking for, problem-solving skills. I wish the schools did more of this, and also I'm going to urge you as parents to not rescue your kids. Help them see failure. It's okay if they get a C, even a C. I didn't even say B, I said C. You know that? And again, I'm a recovering overachiever. C is not the stellar option, but I think when they're getting C's in their classes, they don't feel successful. They feel like they're struggling. So let them sit with that and figure out what they're going to do with that, so they don't continue to feel that, and they can figure out the solutions. So thank you very much.
So thanks, you guys. That was great. I think that got us all thinking about a lot of different things. And now we're just going to open it up to all of you guys. Please feel free to either submit your questions on the cards that we provided to you, or raise your hand high in the air proudly